Hundreds of charities dedicated to helping the more than 15 million veterans who live in the United States. But when you donate your hard-earned money, you want to make sure, right? You want to know that it's going to the men and women who fought for this country.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sentinel. Today, I've got a special guest here, and the reason for that is because a lot of you have written to me about these veterans issues, and I'm not an expert on it. So I've reached out to Elizabeth Hartman. She is an expert on these matters. And we're going to have a discussion about some of the issues and problems that a lot of these veterans organizations are having across the United States. And just prior to, taping this episode, I thought there's just thousands of organizations, veterans organizations. And Elizabeth corrected me. There's over 40,000. So I'm kind of excited about talking to her about these issues. And on that note, Elizabeth, I'd like to hand it off to you. And please, just tell the viewers about your background and your association with the numerous veterans organizations. I know you're involved with the American Legion and also the North Carolina Military Affairs Commission. So please go ahead.
Yeah, so I like to joke. I did absolutely nothing in the Marine Corps. I enlisted, I went to Monterey, I broke my hip, and then I was medically separated after 3.5 years. So boot Lance Corporal through and through, didn't do anything. When I got out, I got a couple degrees, and then I settled down in Eastern North Carolina with my husband. He's still in the Marine Corps, stationed at Cherry Point. Okay. And I started getting involved in different veteran organizations, and it sort of just snowballed from there.
Yeah. So in my research, because, so many people reached out to me, I mean, these veterans organizations are very confusing. So can you give us some background about, how do we end up with 40,000 of these organizations? Because, as a Marine, and, when you're in the Marine Corps, we'd heard about the VFW and the American Legion. I had no idea that all these other organizations exist out there. So please, based on your experience, please tell us.
Yeah, so I think you have to differentiate between congressionally chartered veteran service organizations and then just all these other ones. So you've got the VFW, the DAV, Disabled Veterans, MOA, Military Officers Association, the American Legion. Those are the ones that we all know. Those are your foundational organizations. The American Legion is the largest veteran service organization in America, second to the VFW. But then people started realizing, oh, I can file for nonprofit status overnight. It only takes me about 30 minutes. So veterans, rather than joining these well-established organizations and changing them from within, just decided, I'll make my own nonprofit. And it just it went out of control from there. And that's how you end up with 40,000 different organizations. Individuals, rather than coming together and fixing the foundational problems that we have, just decide they can do it better and they create their own organization.
So, so basically they're like competing with each other rather than collaborating, correct?
Oh, 100%. I would say that if they would all put their egos aside and come together, we could do a heck of a lot more for the veteran community if we didn't have 40,000 different organizations.
So how big are some of these organizations in terms of scale? I mean, what's the biggest and what's the smallest in terms of these nonprofits that you know?
Yeah, so you've got the American Legion. It is the largest veteran service organization in America. I think it has about 1.8 million members right now. That's just the veteran population. If you start pulling in the Sons of the American Legion and the auxiliary, it's a bit larger. And then you'll run into nonprofits that have 5 people in them. And those are the ones that you see pop up all over the country. I'm involved with a lot of outdoors and sportsman nonprofits like Patrol Base Abade, Lieutenant Colonel Tom Schumann's organization, the Fallen Outdoors, and Project Healing Waters. Those have thousands of members. And those are the ones that I'm particularly drawn to because of the good they do. They get veterans outside. You see their impact every single day. It's these little ones where they get their tax exempt status, and then I don't really see what they do, where I start to struggle.
Your organization, I'm fascinated by its mission. It's dedicated to vetting charities. Tell us more about how that works in making sure people's money is really going straight to the source.
Well, first of all, we vet about 100 charities. That's actually 102 charities. But there are 45,000 veteran charities that are in existence right now. And most of them are small, little mom and pop charities that anybody can start. And quite frankly, too many of them waste money. And we've got billions of dollars that are being contributed to veteran charities every year. And most people are just responding to an advertisement on TV or to a direct mail. direct mail into their homes, and they don't really understand whether or not the charity is spending their money wisely. And so we started this foundation and a website, charitiesforvets.org. And on that website, you can find our ratings. And we only rate veteran charities. We don't rate other kinds of charities. And we recommend or don't recommend people give. And there are a lot of charities on there that are recognizable names. You know, people contribute, as I say, billions of dollars. And there are charities out there that have 5, 10, 15 years worth of their budget in reserves. And that's not why people are contributing money. They're contributing because they want it spent for veterans. And so if we find a charity that's got, for example, 20 years worth of reserves in the bank, we say they're not recommended for additional contributions.
So, I mean, what's the purpose behind this tax exemption status? What benefit do they get out of it, the little ones? I mean, obviously, they're not getting enough money in with 5 members. So, I mean, what's going on in the background?
I'm not sure. I think sometimes it just helps to say, you know, I don't have my own nonprofit, so I'd be lying if I could tell you why someone does it. Maybe they're looking for the ability to put their name on something. Honestly, that's what I think is at the core of most of this, because there is a nonprofit out there for you to join and serve and work for. You just have to find it. At this point, there's no need for any more. So I struggle to see why people create new ones. That's something I don't have an answer for.
So these non-congressional mandated organizations, you know, the private ones that we have, the nonprofits, how are they getting their funding? How are they managing?
So, you know, the 3 I mentioned, the 3 outdoors ones that I love dearly, they're not congressionally chartered.
Right.
And so you get those just like you would any nonprofit, whether it's veteran or not. You go out and you seek donations. I, for one, will loudly scream people need to donate to Patrol Base Abate, to Project Healing Waters, because they have such transparent financials. You can see the good they do in their communities every single day. These other smaller organizations, half of them I don't even know the name of, they do the same thing. They go out to their community, they solicit donations, they say, I'm doing good things. And then they spend the money however they spend the money.
So they get donations and like fundraisers, barbecues, and
fundraisers, barbecues, all those obnoxious things you've heard of.
Now, what about the oversight for these organizations? And let's talk about financial oversight first.
Yeah, so financial oversight, this is sort of where I've been focused recently, and I'll go back to the American Legion's national organization. So for those who don't understand the American Legion, you have the national organization, then you have the state level organization, and then your local posts. I want to emphasize for your viewers that the posts, those small brick and mortars in your community, do overwhelming good. They are the ones serving the community. They're the ones getting out there and building the ramps and helping the homeless. But the national organization, I've found, especially as I dig into their financial reports, I question their spending. For instance, the American Legion has a nearly $800,000 contract with just one media company. They're spending millions of dollars on advertising annually. And for what? I mean, you know better than I do. Most people don't even know what the American Legion is.
Yeah.
If money was spent on veterans, imagine the good they would be doing. And you can see those problems. I personally think you see them the most with the American Legion, but because it's so large. But you can see them in many, many different organizations.
Do they have to provide audited financials at the end of the year? Who's providing the oversight for all this stuff?
Yeah, so they do provide their 990, their IRS form 990, which is how I'm able to find most of this information. But they're very hard to read. If you don't know what you're reading, you don't know what you're reading. And so a lot of these organizations, I would argue, it is my opinion, that they have sort of pulled the veil over their membership's eyes. They're able to manipulate the data, manipulate the numbers to say they're doing good things. But when I look at the American Legion giving over $500,000 in compensation annually to their national adjutant, we have an issue. That's not service.
Said that $500,000 to an adjutant. What does an adjutant do?
So an adjutant's going to be like your CEO. They're going to be the chief executive officer of the organization. For the American Legion's chief executive officer to be pocketing over $500,000 annually, I have an issue with that. Are you truly serving, or have you lost sight of that? Is it now about the money?
I mean, is that like college presidents? I mean, college presidents get paid pretty well, and they claim that they get paid well is not only because they're the president of the college, but they also have to do this fundraising and they bring money in. So would that be a reason for that?
That's actually a great question. You know, you could argue that, except the American Legion's been operating at a loss. So I would say if you're losing money year over year, and if you're losing members year over year, you cannot justify to me the American Legion adjutant's salary. There's no way.
What about the VFW? Same issue?
No, I work very closely with the VFW. It's funny, when they started seeing me put the American Legion on blast, their chief financial officer called me and he was like, I need you to look at our numbers. Sent me all of their internal reports, so not their 990s. Their money is being spent wisely. I think they remind me a lot of some of these smaller ones. Project Healing Waters, Above Board, Patrol Base Abade, I don't think spends enough on admin. They're spending 98% of their income on the veteran. Heck, if they spent a little bit more on admin, I think they could scale up a little bit better. The American Legion's one of the worst. I have a lot of concerns with Save Our Allies, which you may have heard of. Heavily involved with the withdrawal from Kabul, that whole kerfuffle.
Yep.
They've got some questionable expenditures, primarily being that their board is ran by one of the board members' spouses. She's the chief financial officer. I've got a lot of questions about Save Our Allies also. There's a few shady ones out there.
So, I mean, is there like a website or a group that you can go to and get an assessment or a rating on these organizations? Yeah. And are they all registered with that group to be able to, you know, get that assessment?
Yes, if they file a public form IRS 990, they're on
Okay.
ProPublica. I would send
ProPublica?
everyone to ProPublica. That's where I get my data, because ProPublica posts the actual document. It's not anyone interpreting it for you. It's the raw data. They do flag for you concerning expenditures. So they'll be like, we think they're spending a lot on money or on salaries or on travel. So they'll flag little things for you, but they won't interpret. They give you the data for you to read yourself.
So I know for like normal charities and stuff, there's organizations that'll give them a rating, and then they have a cap where they'll say, you know, if they're spending only about 8% on admin and overhead expenses, they get a very high rating. Anything
Yes.
beyond that, there's some organizations that are up 20, 25, 30%, you know.
American Legion.
So what about the ethical side of these organizations? I mean, who does the background investigations on these individuals to see that they're legit and they're not criminals? Because I've seen a lot of posts out there that some of these guys are hardcore criminals. They're registered sex offenders and stuff like that are running these organizations. Without going into names, I mean, what do you know about that?
Well, if you don't mind, I'll drop names where I can. So,
okay, sure, yeah.
Two that I have been sounding the alarm on very loudly. The American Legion, Nebraska. So you've got their state, their department, Nebraska. One of their vice commanders, John Arias, is a convicted sex offender. He was convicted for brutally beating, torturing, and raping his ex-wife while his children were in the house, and then fleeing the scene with his children. He was convicted. He spent years in prison. He's since been released. And multiple American Legion members advocated with their silly little caps on in the court to have his record expunged. And it infuriates me because in one breath, you have these members advocating for criminals, convicted criminals, and in the next breath, they question why they can't get women in the younger generation to join. Similarly, we have Parade Deck, which is the most recent story I broke. Their founder, Andrew Appleton, a convicted child molester. He was 40 years old. He molested a 12-year-old child, and he founded Parade Deck. And all of these things are, sometimes I feel like I'm screaming to a brick wall, because even when it is elevated, those who have the option or the power to do something sweep it under the rug.
Are these people former military members?
Oh, yeah. I forget what branch John Arias in Nebraska was, but Appleton, he was a Marine.
You got to be shitting me.
I'm not. And Honor, courage, commitment. Where's your honor? Sorry, I'm getting a little angry.
No, I'm with you. I mean, I'm amped up right now too. I mean, but how the hell can these people start an organization like that and get away with it? I mean, who,
It's in my opinion, and I'll emphasize this, it's in my opinion, it's a complete and utter failure for corporate governance. The board, from the moment they started gaining traction, the parade deck board should have implemented criminal background checks. And from what I've been told, again, this is not confirmed, I've just been told from numerous sources who have admitted that they knew he was a registered sex offender. They just chose not to elevate that. They chose not to share it. So you've got these people who know and then refuse to do the right thing. It's a failure on so many levels. And I don't understand it.
but what about the state government? Aren't they looking into like Better Business Bureau and, is there a state oversight that looks into this?
I've looked into BBB a lot because I'm curious, is this stuff being reported? And I don't understand that side at all, because I don't understand why the states aren't getting more involved. I don't understand why National American Legion isn't coming down and saying, hey, this convicted felon shouldn't be leading the state of Nebraska. I don't understand that. I don't understand why veterans from every level, it doesn't just need to be the national organization, it can be the members. Why aren't they standing up and saying, hey, we deserve better than a convicted child molester running this organization? I don't know. It's a failure.
Would it be because there's a lot of sympathy out there for veterans and nobody wants to like dip their toes in, in that hot water?
I don't think it's a sympathy for veterans. I think it's a sympathy for criminals. Maybe it is a sympathy for veterans. People are afraid to say it because they once served.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to say it. I don't give a shit if you served. If you've then
Yeah,
gone
exactly.
on,
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, but there's a lot of people out there that they take advantage and they've created these veterans organizations because of the sympathy out there, and they're looking for money. And there's a lot, there's a lot of old moms and pops that are, out of patriotism will donate to these organizations, and we have no idea where the hell this money's going.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the last time I went to, and I forget if it was a VFW or American Legion, it was nothing more than a bar. I mean, that's all it was. A bunch of old guys, half of them
Sitting out
are
of a
drunk.
bar.
Yeah, talking trash and looking for free beers, cheap beers, And so, and I walked out of there. I was like, you know what? I want no part of this. This is not really good for me. But getting back to the original point of these organizations, but they're out there. They're supposed to be out there. There's 40,000 organizations to be able to help the veterans, right?
Yes,
fair statement?
That's the intent.
Okay, but if you look at the veterans' mental health crisis that we're going through, and the sad incident that just happened, yesterday, we had two shootings. Unfortunately, both of them were Marines, and it just tears my heart, because obviously there's something going on in their heads, and the whole story will come out. But what we don't know is what was going on in their heads, and did they reach out to somebody? Did somebody help them? And my question, I guess, is, with all these organizations, why is the suicide rates amongst veterans still at a high peak? It ranges from 17 to 22 a day. I mean, that's mind-blowing stuff to me. Combat is very personal. My experience is very different to your experience or the next person's experience, because we're all looking at it through a soda straw, right? And it's these little pixels that all come together, and then you figure out what the hell happened, right? So it's a very personal thing, and it's tough to communicate that with the people that weren't there. So that's one issue, right? And the other issue is when a lot of these people they come back, without having a support network, and then they see the lip service that's paid to veterans, right? Lip service by senior officers. They'll talk about Semper Fidelis and all that stuff, but very few units do reunions. There's some in the West Coast that do it quite often, but on the East Coast, it's not that frequent, right?
I think a lot of senior leadership are missing the mark on what they're called to do. I want to highlight an example of someone I think crushing it. Lieutenant Colonel Tom Schuman, AITV, School of Infantry East. He's implemented spiritual wellness Fridays, I believe it is, where you come in and you chat and you guys are going to get to the core of the issues. And something as simple as your battalion commander offering a safe space for people to come in and chat about life.
Yeah, absolutely.
going great. Maybe you're having a great week and you want to share it.
Yeah.
Maybe you're having a bad week. It's so simple to just open the door and offer that spot. And I think if we could do that when the guys get back from combat, do that when they separate from the military, that's what matters.
So, so at the end of the day, you go to these VFWs, and the problem is these generational gaps, right? So when I was a young lieutenant and I went to the VFW, we had Korean War veterans, which, all I'm thinking is Chesty Puller and Chosin Reservoir, right? That's all in my brain. And then later on, it's the Vietnam veterans. And now you've had so many conflicts. There's so many different veterans. Experiences in Iraq are different than Afghanistan, and whatnot. So it's tough for people to connect, right? Everybody is not sort of homogenized, in their experiences. That's the fundamental issue. The what?
I want to push back a little bit on that.
Yeah, go do it.
You do have all of these different generations. But when we saw Kabul fall, the first people in my American Legion post to pick up the phone and get a hold of the guys who were at Kabul were the Vietnam veterans, because they got it more than anyone else, because they saw the fall of Saigon. Yep. And it was beautiful, but it was gut wrenching at the same time. Yes. These generational differences, they were gone, because I get chills talking about it. Doesn't matter what war you served in. It was all the same at that moment.
At that moment, for that specific incident, but for the previous 20 years,
it was never the same. Yeah,
it was never the same, right? So it was a whole different thing. And I've spent half my lifetime in Afghanistan now, and it's insanity. It's literally crazy what happened. And I really feel for the Marines, and back then, Mackenzie got us extended twice. I'd been out, all my Marines and myself had been 100 miles away from his fob, where he's chilling out in an air condition. Yeah. We'd all lost 25, 30 pounds. We had not changed our uniforms for over 3 months. No shower, all that crap, right? Up in the mountains, 10,000 feet and all that stuff. And we're supposed to be going home, we fought through this pass for 17 days, and we're supposed to go to Kandahar. We get to the last objective, and I get a call. He's really excited. Hey, we just got extended. And I'm like, extended for what? He said, well, this is great for the MEU. I said, we're done. I said, my Marines are, mentally we're checked out. This is insanity. And we went back and forth, and, finally, he basically ordered me. So I said, you know what? I'm telling you something. I'll do it, but I'm going to freaking retire. I'm telling you this also. And I walked away because I threw the handset down. I remember that. And I walked to this like a cliff, and I cried, and I cried. And my OPSO came up to me, Major Christmas at the time, Brian Christmas. He's like, sir, are you okay? I said, no, I'm not okay, Brian. I said, let me tell you something. I'm going to retire, but one day you're going to be a general. You remember this day. You don't treat Marines like this. We fought all the way back, right? And then we get back to the FOB. He extended us one more time.
Oh, my God.
One more time for another 2 weeks. So these Marines were getting jerked around for his glory. And then guess who gets the first combat award?
He does.
He does. Bronze Star. And I'm sitting there watching this shit, and I'm thinking, I haven't even recognized my Marines. Some of them got Navy Crosses, Silver Stars, and all that stuff, and they're fantastic. Well, yeah. And, and another thing, I kept my mouth shut. I'd lost one Marine. Out of 1,200, I'd lost one Marine. Guess how I lost him? They were working for the MEU. Because I was 60 kilometers away. So the MEU was, because MEU wanted to show I've got all these units in the battle space, right? We're an army-sized brigade. And I argued about this. I said, you don't need this platoon over there. I can get Afghan militia to occupy this space. No. And then this contact happens, I lose a Marine. And I was so freaking pissed. I'll tell you what, he's lucky. Well, I won't say anything, but
I had a close buddy of mine who had a break in service for almost that exact same reason you're discussing. He had been gone so long that his body was not his body anymore. And he was like, if I don't get out and recover, I'm not going to be able to continue to serve.
Yeah.
What they did to those men is
criminal.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I haven't given up. I've got a book coming out in the next 3-4 weeks.
I know. I'm going to get it. I'm very excited.
I'll send you a copy. But my point is, it's going to ruffle some feathers. I sent it out for critical reviews, and people come back said this is at the same level as, you remember, you probably don't because you're younger, a book called About Face.
I don't
So when
remember.
I was a lieutenant, this book came out called About Face. The author was David Hackworth, the most decorated Korean and Vietnam veteran, right? Colonel, outspoken, Army drummed him out and retired him. So he writes this book About Face, all the issues and stuff. And it's a leadership book, right? Based on his experiences. And we all read it. And we made a commitment that we're not going to repeat the same mistakes again. And guess what?
And then
We did. We did.
We do.
So getting back on track now. So the suicide issues. Now tell me, from your perspective, these veterans organizations, what can the veterans organizations do better in terms of bringing down the suicide rates amongst veterans?
I would love to see veteran organizations be more vocal where it actually matters. Start organizing coffee Saturdays. I've got a post 2 blocks down. Every Saturday, the doors are open and every generation shows up just to shoot the shit and drink a coffee together. It's not at a bar. I've got other posts who prefer the bar option. They go out in town, they invite folks, and it works. I would love to see, when a veteran reaches out in crisis, organizations do more to assist, because we don't know what ultimately causes suicide, but I personally believe it's a lot of things. It could be a divorce. It could be the loss of a child, a loss of a buddy. It could be not being able to pay your utilities.
Yes.
When they reach out, everything needs to be dropped. At the unit level, while guys are still in the Marine Corps, guys and gals, that's where it starts. I think every single person who hears me today needs to look at what Lieutenant Colonel Schuman's doing with these weekly gatherings, and they need to mirror it. There's no reason you shouldn't have that group, that community now. And then when you separate, you need to maintain that group and that community.
Can there be a relationship between the government and these organizations?
Yeah, we
because,
could.
we spend billions of dollars on other countries and all that stuff. What I would like to see is some of that money coming back to the veterans, back to Americans, to help Americans, right? And the problem is the misuse of these funds, and you've got these shady characters in these veterans organizations. So the first thing maybe we need to do is have some sort of oversight. Right?
Assad, if you could get me a congressional audit of the American Legion, I would be the happiest girl in the world.
Well, I mean, we need to. Yeah, we need to, and we'll work on this, because I'm sort of starting to embrace a lot of these issues. And I think what needs to happen is, first we got to have oversight. We got to have rules and regulations.
Yeah.
Like, this is the way we want you to act and behave, right? Like we do for other organizations. And then once that is done, you establish that, and then you start mandating them to work together.
I think there's an issue when I want a true audit. I don't want where someone says, well, I filed my form 990. No.
Yes.
You can put those numbers though, no, but nobody knows what it means.
Yeah.
Show me where the money's going. I want them in front of Congress answering questions. Why did money go here? Why didn't it go here? And to some of these organizations, particularly the American Legion, who continuously, this past year, they dropped saving our allies, Afghan allies, from the agenda. If you have the ability to get in front of Congress and you aren't talking about what matters, get off the hill. You shouldn't be there anymore. We need new leadership. And so get me going. Yes, let's get a congressional audit of some of these organizations that have gone astray.
Now, based on your experience, which congressional subcommittee would be responsible for this? That the viewers can start contacting. I mean, that's where I'm going with this, because I want to energize the Digimob that we have. In this channel.
Yeah, I've gone to HVAC and SVAC numerous times, House Veteran and House and Senate Veterans Affairs.
Yeah.
I think it needs to go over to oversight. I think it needs to go to House oversight, just because of that congressionally mandated or congressionally chartered organization status. Hit them up. I mean, you've got my own Congressman Greg Murphy. He's on the House Veteran Affairs Committee. He needs to be asked questions. Great man. I know he will once he's made aware of these things. Hit up your congressman at House Veterans Affairs, House Oversight, Senate Veterans Affairs, and ask them, why is the American Legion spending this much money on their staff and not on their veterans? I'll tell you a little aside. So you're a Marine, I'm a Marine. We know where Yuma is. You and I don't need to fly anywhere to figure out what's wrong with the Marine Corps. We already know. The American Legion flew a bunch of their staff out to Marine Corps Air Station Yuma in order to do a interview of the Marines to figure out what's going on with their quality of life. Spent all this money to fly them out, put them up in wherever they stayed. I can tell you what's wrong. They need better housing. They need better childcare. They need more field ops so that they feel like Marines. This isn't rocket science. And so you've got this national organization flying these guys out on member dollars to tell us what we already fucking know. And then to stand up and say, look at all we've done. Call that shit out. Like,
Yeah, it's a boondoggle. That's what it is.
boondoggle. It's a boondoggle.
That's what it is. And, and I don't know why they do pick Yuma for a boondoggle.
Yeah. Can we pick? Get me going.
Yeah. I mean, pick Pendleton or something. At least you got.
I know why they. You want to get real for a second. I know why they picked Yuma.
Why?
Because Yuma is in Arizona, and the national commander of the American Legion. They're going to tell you it's elected. It's not. They pick him years in advance, and the set person who will be coronated the national commander in 2027 is from Arizona. The guy's never led a post. He's never led a district, division, department. The guy was in the Army for 4 years. He's going to be the national commander. And so, of course, you got to do the boondoggle to Arizona.
And I'm sure the viewers would love to get energized because, 90% of the viewers on this channel are all veterans, right? And some of them date back to, they're in their 80s and stuff, and I've got the utmost respect. And I try to answer every comment. I answer every comment. So some days I'll spend 2 to 3 hours answering their comments, right? Man. But, and I owe it to them. We have 3 main goals. The first main goal is hold our government officials and senior military leadership accountable. Second is stop foreign misadventures. And third is come up with practical solutions. That's it. That's the 3 main goals of this channel.
Can I share a story of one of those organizations, if you don't mind?
Of course, yes.
So Project Healing Waters, fly fishing organization. And a lot of these organizations that are about getting outdoors, they take these veterans on these like gorgeous trips, and that's awesome. But when you get home, what do you do then? Yeah. And in holiday time, particularly, that's when a lot of these guys get very depressed. Project Healing Waters sets up tie flying sessions. I don't know if you fish.
Yeah.
Very intricate ties on Christmas Day. And tears come to my eyes every time I talk about this, because those are the moments where you're at home, where you're most alone, where when you can get on a Zoom call with a bunch of dudes and tie a little fly, that is saving lives. And when I look at these organizations like Project Healing Waters, Patrol Base Abade, The Fallen Outdoors, it gives me great, great hope. I know there are good ones out there.
Yeah, and those are the ones we got to recognize, right? Because they're doing a lot of good and they're touching people's hearts. And it's the other ones, the scumbags, the pedophiles and these sexual, deviants that are out there. We need to weed them out and force them out of these organizations. I mean, that's the way I look at it. But at the end of the day, go ahead.
Your viewers have to get more vocal. The thing that really pissed me off about Parade Deck, 1, it's founded by a pedophile, but 2, that 3 different individuals contacted me directly and told me they knew for months. Your viewers have to get more vocal about what is okay and what is not.
I don't think the viewers on this channel know about it. And I purposely didn't talk about Parade Deck for a couple of reasons. That's why I invited you on here. Okay. But I'll tell you what, once they find out, they're going to get pissed off. I guarantee it.
Hell yeah.
I know them. And that's what we're trying to do is energize, energize the veterans to have a voice, right? And that's the important part of it. But here's the deal. I mean, if we really want to stop veteran suicides, if you really truly want to stop it, stop the foreign misadventures. Stop going to war.
John Adams' speech about where he talks about not going out to seek monsters at night.
Yes, because they're falling home. Yes.
It's when we make these other countries' problems our own.
Yep.
We lose sight of what matters.
That's right.
It's people here. I
think that's the most important thing. If you really want to look at a long-term solution, think twice, think 10 times before you go to war. And I always, pull up the Constitution because I always have a copy near me. I've always carried them. I've got multiple copies that I've carried for several years. And the most important thing in that is the War Powers Act, right?
Absolutely.
A president just can't willy-nilly just take us to war. Hey, let's go invade Iraq and look at the consequences of that.
Then I have something I want your followers to do too. In this topic of these foreign misadventures, repeal outdated authorizations for use of military force. I'm not saying we shouldn't be able to go overseas, but we shouldn't be operating under 20-year-old AUMFs. You have Congress consistently giving more and more power to the executive. And the more they do that, the more it usurps the people's voice. Our people aren't actively involved in determining, where we're going to war and when we're sending troops, because Congress hasn't passed a new authorization for use of military force in 24 years.
But I thought that authorization was just primarily for the global war on terrorism, right?
It is for the global war on terror.
But it hasn't been rescinded. There's no end date on it.
There's no end date on it. And because of how it's worded, I can use that to get me into Syria, to get me into Afghanistan, to get into Iraq. I can use it to get into Africa.
Yeah.
You have multiple different theaters falling under a 24-year-old document. I believe it's being misused. I believe it needs to be rescinded. And then if you have a mission, a clearly articulated mission with a clearly articulated end goal, write a new AUMF for that, pass that. But when you have these broadly written pieces of legislation, the government's going to do what the government does best. They're going to misuse it.
To me, and it's in the out years, the impact and the cost of that war, right? Forget the money, and we certainly, we lost nearly 5,000, service members in Iraq, and over 33,000 got wounded. But nobody's counting the ones that we're losing at home, right? That come back and yeah, and that's the sad part. I mean, it just craws at everybody, right?
How do you see your government now talking about going back into Afghanistan and sit at home and think to yourself, like, what was the purpose of that 20 years?
Yeah, that was absurd. I did an episode maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago where we basically told the Taliban to come into Kabul, right? Because we didn't know how to negotiate with them, right? And the way I would have negotiated, because you got to read a little bit of history, right? How did we get Guantanamo Bay? As a result of the Spanish-American War, and we should have made a similar deal with the Taliban, saying, you know what, we'll withdraw, but you give us Bagram. Long lease, we'll give you, whatever the cost is, $1 or $1 million or $10 million a year or whatever. And but we want Bagram. And I'll tell you what, they would have probably agreed to it if there was a mutual agreement, right? You invite us in and we'll be there as your guests. We're not invaders. We're there. So that's the type of thinking we just don't have at the senior levels, unfortunately, because everybody just wanted to get the hell out of there. And they didn't understand the long-term consequences.
3 years later, and they're negotiating to get back in there. It makes us look like absolute fools.
Yeah.
And more concerningly, it makes every single veteran who had anything to do with that conflict, whether they deployed or not, question why they ever joined.
Right.
Because it makes us all realize, I think it makes most veterans realize that at the end of the day, they were all pawns.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sad, and pawns for, either the military industrial complex or the neoconservatives, the neocons, guys like Cheney and all that stuff, or, the zeal to go on this crusade, for lack of a better word. And that's what we initially called it, the infinite justice or whatever, and, and all that stuff. And what happened was nobody thought it through and said, you know what? And I was one of the first people to go over there. I don't know if you know this, back in 2001. And I remember telling everybody that we're going to be there for 40 years. I was wrong. It was only 20. And the reason, yeah, and the reason I said that was because there's certain things we could have done if we were thinking long term, rather than putting up shelter halves, then A-frames, and then clamshells, and then building, wooden barracks, and then building brick barracks. So rather than doing this thing incrementally, you just say, you know what, we're going to be here for 40 years. Let's invest in this thing and let's build it one time. And here's the fatal error that we made. I was a big proponent of putting a nuclear power plant in Bagram, and people thought I was freaking nuts. They thought I was insane. At that time, Afghanistan's total electricity requirement was 10 megawatts total, right? So it was a problem of transmission and distribution. That was the problem. Because if you put the nuclear power plant, it's just getting the power to where you need to go, and the economy can grow. People can have jobs, their lives improve. And what we ended up doing was we started putting up generators, big generators, 1 megawatt, 3 megawatts, and all these big generators. As you well know, generators require fuel. That fuel had to come from Pakistan, right? So these fuels coming on trucks, and guess who owns the roads? The Taliban did. So we hired security companies to provide security to these fuel trucks. And guess what the security companies are doing? They're paying off the Taliban not to attack them. So the Taliban's making money.
Making money.
And guess what happens? And once we started pulling back, They couldn't maintain the generator sets. They couldn't afford the fuel, and it turned into a big mess. So it was like stupid decisions like that, right?
And you say it didn't last for 40 years, but I think it's
We'll
important
be
to
back.
note we're going to be back,
Yeah.
and we are deployed everywhere right now. The average American doesn't realize, it bums me out that your viewers are primarily veterans, because it's the non-veterans who need to know Marines are deployed in dangerous areas every single day, despite what Kamala Harris says in a freaking debate. Marines are deployed in dangerous locations every single day.
Marines are deployed in every country except two, North Korea and Iran. I mean, think
People
about
don't
it.
even
Yeah, they're at every embassy, right? Every embassy has Marines.
know.
Yeah. So I think that so people don't know that, and I think the other thing people don't realize is we've got 800 bases and facilities overseas. 800.
Going back to our John Adams, why are we seeking monsters to destroy globally? What are we doing here?
It's a money laundering machine, right? It's billions of dollars. The largest budget in the U.S. line item is the Pentagon, $1 trillion,
So
850.
it sounds like we just solved everything. So we're gonna quit, going overseas for ridiculous wars. We're gonna audit these organizations. We're gonna fire everybody who's misusing money. We've solved it all.
And the criminals, we have to fire them.
Get them out.
That's so important because especially these pedophile types, right? I mean, we've forgotten this Jeffrey Epstein thing. We sort of swept that under the rugs, right? But there's other Jeffrey Epsteins out there.
Yes, there are real Jeffrey Epsteins in these veteran organizations.
Yes.
Parade Deck released 3 statements back to back to back. And, the last one said, we've accepted a letter of resignation from Andrew Appleton. We're working to divest his shares. And I'm sure Parade Deck is hoping that this is all water under the bridge. But to that, I say, no, it's not. Every single person on that board, every single person in that organization who knew he was a pedophile and failed to tell people, they're messed up too.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a personal story. Back in August, I was at the VFW's national convention, and I was invited by Parade Deck to speak. My 3-month-old at the time was in the audience. And so had I known the guy was a pedophile, I wouldn't have been anywhere near the Parade Deck. Whether or not he was there, I never would have been anywhere near that organization.
Yeah, you don't want your name associated with them. No.
I don't want my name associated with them.
Yeah.
And I know damn well, because the person who first brought this to my attention, she was there, and she saw my daughter, and she saw me there. And every single person who knew and who failed to sound the alarm, whew.
And she didn't say anything. That's sick.
That's the problem.
Well, I'll tell you what, Elizabeth, you're welcome to come anytime you got an issue you want to talk to. I mean, my following is nowhere close to yours, but I think, we have a solid group of veterans. You're more than welcome to, come take the mic and tell us about any issue that you need help with. And we'd be glad to do that, because I like keeping people informed, right? And I don't like the normal stuff that a lot of these vet bro types are doing, and they're like with each other. That's not my style, right? I like to talk about issues that matter, based on our mission statement, and that's what I kind of focus on. And I think this is corruption at senior level, in veterans organizations, and we need to start attacking it, and we're going to start taking a look at it. I mean, I'm telling you this, and I'm going to start digging into it.
Excited. I was so darn excited when you reached out, because I wanted to thank you, because you and I have gone back and forth on LinkedIn. We've had our little bits for tat. And I think the fact that we're talking right now shows that you can disagree with people, but there are some fundamentally wrong things that we have to come together for.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Very excited that we were able to.
So we look forward to bringing you back. I appreciate the time, and anytime you want to come back on this channel, please let us know. Open invitation, and we encourage it. And some of the issues that you deal with, because I think our viewers definitely would be interested in learning from you. So big thanks to Elizabeth Hartman. She's a big advocate for veterans issues and a fighter. She spends a lot of her own personal time to ensure that veterans are getting a fair shake. But the important issues that we discussed is oversight on these 40,000 veterans organizations. There has to be financial oversight, and we need to figure out how these organizations can collaborate together for the benefit of veterans. So finally, we cannot have these criminal types associated with veterans organizations. There has to be a thorough background check, especially in the leadership positions, to make sure that we've got the highest quality individuals in charge of these organizations for the benefit of veterans. Because at the end of the day, these organizations get their tax-free status so they can benefit veterans, not for the personal benefit of individuals associated with them. And I appreciate you writing to your congressional representatives on these issues. They're important issues, and our voices have to be heard. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. That's all I got. Stay rugged, stay united. Khan out.